Well, everyone, welcome back to a very exciting episode of the Storyblocks podcast. Today, my friends, I've got a very special guest, someone who hasn't been on many podcasts now for quite some time, and there's for good reason for that. He's been very, very busy behind the scenes, and he's got a brand new book coming out as well called Healing Adaptogens, which is launching, funny enough, on the same day as my first book too, which is pretty cool. And we're just chatting a moment ago, and we have so much in common. It's not even funny. We're probably brothers from another mother. It's pretty cool. But he's also the CEO of Four Sigmatic. Many of you may have heard of that company on quite a few podcasts. I know I did. So that company has got quite a bit of resonance to me, but his name is Tero Isokauppila. If I got the last name probably wrong, I'm sorry, man. Isco. Okay. I'll let you say your full name for the audience, man. Go for it.
No, there's two ways of being just gone by a first name. One is that you've become very, very famous, like Madonna or JC or whatever, or you have such a hard last name that people just settle for your first name. So I just go by first name only. So Tero.
Tero, man. Tero, the legend. Well, man, can I welcome you so much to the Storyblocks podcast today?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Like I said before we started, listening to your episodes, and you do such a fantastic job. So congrats on all the success.
No, thank you, man. I'm honored to actually have you here and have a conversation with you because like I mentioned actually in the intro, I heard all about Four Sigmatic. I was quite interested about Four Sigmatic from a bunch of podcast sponsorships. Like you got yourself out there fairly quickly, I believe, back in the day. And I don't know, because some of the podcasts I was listening to, they might have changed the sponsorships and all that sort of stuff. That's totally fine. Because I don't hear it too many and I listen to quite a bunch of podcasts, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, I wanted to ask you my very first question for you, which is what does success look like for you?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And it's kind of like diet or nutrition is that it evolves. And some things hopefully stay stable, such as values and your North Star and mission, but then success changes. And I feel like this is actually a huge issue if you think it is stagnant, because we have these archetypes and phases in life. And saying yes is also saying no. And if you're afraid to say no, then you're not going to say yes. And if you try to be this balanced life every year of your life, it's not. You got to have themes, and it's like a hero's journey in a way. So what I've tried since I was about 17 years old is I write annual goals, and I also write my perfect day. And I write like an extensive from every minute of the day, like what does perfect day look like? And I can tell you I'm a new parent, so my life perfect day today is very different than when I didn't have kids and I was like a single guy gallivanting around the world, living in all these places. It's very different life. And so it's evolving. So for me, success is, if I would have to define it, it's mostly through my values and my mission. I want to see the truth and accept it. That's something. I want to respond to things with positivity and uplifting and solutions. Not always easy. And yeah, I want to live my life in my way, not someone else's life in my way, or my life in someone else's way. So those are things that I keep telling myself, and some of the more tactical things changed with different phases of my life so far.
What are some of your values now? How have they changed over time? And how has bringing those values into your life helped create a perfect day for you? And what does the perfect day look like for you? I know a couple of questions in there for you.
Yeah, I have the same 5 values I've always had as a core value. So at the very, very core, my value is time. So every other value ties into time. And then I have 4 other values like freedom, wisdom. But within, there's like sub values within, like what does freedom mean to me? And that has changed. So for example, having a child, I didn't think of freedom. I grew up in Finland. I've lived in 10 countries. I was very like flexible, but when you have a child, you have to think about certain things for the kid. Like we did home birth, and you can kind of do home birth everywhere. honestly, but it is a lot harder in certain places. We used to live in California, and you would think California is really easy to do a home birth, but it is and it isn't. And now we live in Austin, Texas, and there's a long history of midwifery. And that is one form of freedom that I didn't consider at all when I was a single guy. But the freedom has stayed stable. So freedom, so time, freedom, wisdom are things that are relevant all the time. But then underneath them, things change.
How do you find that sort of freedom when you're running a major company?
Well, actually, you could say that I run a company to to have freedom, and that's a whole nother story. But like sovereignty might be another word. There's like freedom of speech, but then there's also sovereignty underneath. And unfortunately, how the world is structured, you have to own something to have freedom, and that could mean own land, own water. We have a farm, so we have spring water, own food. You could own intellectual property. Now these days you can own an NFT or a Bitcoin, but you own something and you got to build something to have financial freedom, to that sovereignty for your family. So it matters. And then in a way, like I always wanted to nap. Like my big thing is napping. I nap every day, and that was part of my freedom. And when you're working 9 to 5, I couldn't nap. So I had to build a lifestyle for me, which allows me to nap every day, like I did today.
What time do you nap?
And it's changed with the kid a little bit. Whenever you get it, you get it. But normally for me, the sweet spot is super early, around 11. I like to wake up early, nap early. I nap on a nail bed, and I nap about 15 to 20 minutes. So it's not a long nap, but it's just my moment. And that way I get 2 mornings. I'm most productive in the mornings. So if I nap, I get a morning and a second morning. So I love that.
Did you say nail bed?
Yeah, I've been not quite 20 years, but for a long time, I've been napping on this, it's like a cover on top of a nail bed cover that you goes on a normal bed. And it has I think 3,000 actual nails. There's ones with plastic, but I'm not using those. These were actual kind of metal nails.
What was the decision behind getting a bed of nails? I'm just curious, man.
I've always been to optimal human performance and trying new stuff. And frankly, what now is known as biohacking. And frankly, 80% of that probably doesn't work. So originally I started with an open mind. I found it through some Eastern European. There was an Estonian healer who had a connection in, I think, Bulgaria. And it was very Soviet way of healing. But then it worked really well, and it makes my nervous system relax really well, and my muscles relax really well, especially sitting on a computer. Your shoulders and back are tight. So it really helps. And then later, obviously, I've learned a lot about acupressure that has existed with pretty much every society in the world, have had some sort of, from massage to acupuncture to whatever, where the trigger point therapy, where pressing really hard somewhere actually releases energy in it. And there's a muscle technical answer, and then there's the energy answer. But same concept is by squeezing hard, you actually release energy, which is a good symbol for also life, is that sometimes you got to squeeze hard and press, and it actually creates more freedom when you do that.
So can you actually do different sleeping positions on this bed of nails that it feels relatively comfortable? Can you actually move around, or you just
not really? You wake up if you move around. So the idea is actually there's a lot of them, and they're close to each other. So every nail only carries X amount of weight, and therefore it doesn't penetrate your skin, but it goes really deep into your muscles. But if you go on it unevenly, then suddenly the weight per nail doubles or triples, for example, and then you hurt. But if you're really even, so if there's India used to have these mystics and fakirs that would lay on it, but you have to go really even, and it doesn't hurt, it's really healing. But if you put a lot of pressure on a small area, then it hurts a lot. But if you are more even and more still, which is another way, is it helps me be really still in my nap/meditation, because I start meditating and then I fall asleep basically. So yeah, that's my weird routine. But to the values and success, I think definition of success should be flexible. I think you shouldn't be fixated on it. You can be fixated on values. You can be fixated on how you feel at the end, which is another thing. Sometimes we say, I want to be a millionaire. It's like, I would recommend you explore how you feel when you have financial success versus the number. Because it might be that you get the number, but you don't get the feeling that you were pursuing or the lifestyle that you were pursuing. So
it's not weird to me, man. I think that some of my routines that help bring me that stability, that freedom, and that sense of, I guess, feeling like I am successful in that way, I would class them as weird too. But I don't think it's weird at all for you to say that, because it does bring it. Like you need it in order for you to feel like you're at your optimal self. And if I didn't do what I did, even though some may see that as weird and I kind of class it as weird too, then then I wouldn't be able to achieve the things that I want to achieve on any given day. So I think it's powerful. And yeah, so that's
what's your top three? What's your top three? What other people would consider weird things that are part of your like routine or habit right now?
Well, I get up at 4 a.m. every single morning without fail. So a lot of people would pretty much sleep in. I don't think many people in the population actually get up at that time of the day, the butt crack of dawn. And I spend at least 25 minutes in prayer and meditation as well. And that helps me get my mind focused. And then I spend a good 2 hours out in nature, exercising, and I'm very, very structured with that. Like I don't like not doing it. Let's just say that. So I try and protect it as much as I can. And then when I get home, some of my other routines, like some of the things that I eat and what I do, like I go to bed super early as well, because I just the way my brain works, it needs that. It just shuts itself down at like 5 o'clock at night. So I need that unwinding and that shut off period. And another thing that I do is I usually read quite a lot. So I know not a lot of people actually do that as part of their routine, but I read like it's going out of fashion. And then I'm just very particular with how I spend my time. Like, am I on social media a lot? Am I speaking to people a lot? Or am I working? So if I've got a goal that I want to achieve on any given week or any given day, then I will work, and pretty much my priority will be towards that. So yeah, I don't know if that you would consider those weird at all from your perspective, but I do, because it's like completely out of the norm for a lot of people.
Yeah. And it's funny, it's because of internet and the world we live in, it's easier now find your tribe and your like people. So I bet now in your social circle, meditating and waking up early and prayer and, these things are not that weird, but, without that connection and tribe, if you would just grow up anywhere, probably even in a big city like Sydney, you might feel like not a lot of people wake up at 4 or start meditating at all. But so it's funny, when you spend a lot of time in online communities, you start to feel that they become the norm. And then when you only hang out with people that are like-minded, then you start to think like everybody meditates, right?
Yeah.
No, they don't. They don't.
They try. Some try, some give up pretty quickly. And I think these days it's becoming more in, I guess, style, in fashion, so to speak, because there's been more and more people talking about it. There's different forms of meditation, right? I've noticed, like whatever that looks like for you, and that helps your mindset wherever you're at with that. I mean, fair enough. I mean, if you don't meditate, fair enough too. it works for me. And I know that you meditate too, right?
Yeah. And I've gone through a whole series of things, trying out different mantra-based meditations, mindfulness, stillness. And then maybe this is the Nordic in me, and I know that's also right now super in vogue, but I mean, for me, something like nature, ice, frozen lake. I mean, I know meditation people hate when you say stuff like that. It's like, that's not meditation. But for me, like, we were just in Finland, and you go to like, if you go to cold water, and Wim Hof has made it very popular now, but growing up in Finland, sauna, ice water, nature, those things, it's just you're with your breath, and that mindfulness is really beautiful for me. And then after that, you can move into journaling or, setting intentions or whatever. But I definitely have the typical entrepreneurial monkey mind that I need like a workout or like a shock to it to like level set.
Yeah.
Break the pattern first, or somehow like stop me before I like move forward. So I need that pause, and that pause is the thing. Like a nail bed or ice plunge are really powerful, really powerful pauses.
Yeah, I need to. Doesn't matter. Like if it's freezing cold, like because I grew up in Sydney, and Sydney's not that cold, but if it would be freezing cold in the morning, let's just say it's 2 or 3 degrees, which for a lot of Sydney-siders, that would be considered cold. And I would be wearing shorts, a t-shirt, and like a jumper, and I'd be out in the freezing cold. I loved it. It was that moment of no one else was around, hardly anyone else was up, a moment of stillness, just me pounding the pavement, alone with my thoughts. Let's go. And that was like my jolt to the system, because I'm doing something physically exertive as well as I'm kind of in this state of bliss at the same time, while I am allowing my brain to just get ready for the day ahead. And there's just something about that, man. It's just like a beautiful transition period. Like if you don't do it, you feel like something is definitely missing. And I've noticed that if I don't do it, I've had worse days as a result of not doing it. So I completely understand with you, but I'm interested in, did you grow up with saunas in your house?
Yeah, for sure. Sauna is the only Finnish word in the English language, and I'm from Finland. So we have right now 6 saunas for 4 people, just to give you an idea. So they're a pretty big deal, and we've always had a sauna. So it's since I was birth. I wasn't born in a sauna, but it's also very common. Used to be that kids were born in a sauna because it was the cleanest place on a farm, because it would kill all the bacteria, and then it would be safest to do birth. Yeah.
So what was it like for you growing up in Finland? Did you ever think that you would run your own company one day? Well, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Yes and no. I feel like it was pretty obvious for me early on that I'm either unhireable or I just need to do a thing. But no, what has transpired now, if I would go back, I would have no clue. So, it's like the saying where we often overestimate what we can achieve in 12 months, but we underestimate what we can do in 5 years. So now I'm like, call it 20 years into intense, like goal setting. So like, if you go back to the beginning, what I thought was possible is limited views on the world. And the other part I didn't really know is a lot of the things in health and wellness that, I'm known for, I also thought were pretty normal, like a sauna and cold plunge and mushrooms and adaptogens. Like these things I thought were like not table stakes, but like pretty like known. And 20 years later, they're still not known. They're obviously way more popular than they were 20 years ago. But that was my bubble, is the Nordic wellness bubble a little bit. So yeah, I there were some themes, like I really wanted to travel, see the world. I felt like I wanted to build something of my own. Those felt, and like health and wellness have been like a lifelong journey. So those I would have guessed, but just on a smaller scale and different front, it's like, yeah, it's interesting to see when you consistently work on yourself. Yeah. And also the world has changed a lot. So what is possible, and it's usually a lot more than what you can even imagine in your wildest dreams.
So growing up, you basically learned all about healing adaptogens from your native country of Finland.
Yeah, and from my family, so I'm a 13th generation family farmer. So me and my brother Beza manage the farm, and then hopefully our kids, our boys will then take over to be the 14th. And my mom taught physiology and anatomy. My dad was an agronomist. So I learned the ways of like farming and nature from my dad, and then the human body from my mom. And then I studied nutrition and chemistry first. My first degree was in chemistry, then nutrition. So the culture definitely helped in many ways, but then on top of that, through my family lineage and then studying, learn more. And that's how I ended up learning about adaptogens and mushrooms and health and wellness and whatnot.
Is that why you wanted to write your new book, to bring all this foundational wisdom to pretty much the world so they can know about it too?
Yeah, for sure. Like very, very short answer is I wanted to write a book that existed when I started. Yeah. So that was a big journey. I didn't write this book because like, oh, it's going to be like this hit book for 3 months. I truly think this book is like a seminal book on adaptogens and will be relevant for 20 to 30 years, if not more, with maybe some updated prints on latest studies added. But yeah, I think I wanted to write a book. Secondly, I think what I observed both in my life and people around me over particularly the last 2-3 years when I've been working on this book is mental wellness. So when I started Four Sigmatic 10 years ago, or came to the US soon after that, like things like brain power were not a thing. And we've since, with products that are often labeled as nootropics, but the products that help with cognitive function have really exploded. But what I've also noticed, particularly in the last few years, is the ability to modulate, not just like stimulate, but adapt your body to stressors. And I think COVID probably made a number on a lot of people, but also like unhealthy coping mechanisms that have existed for a long time, anywhere from Adderall, different kinds of stimulants and sedatives, and also probably lack of connection with something bigger than yourself. It's a generational thing, but I see a lot of people struggling with stress, sleep, and mental wellness. And a lot of people are not going to bed at 8 or 9, or they're just generally struggling with sleep and stress and anxiety and things like that. And these adaptogens have been used for thousands of years for a lot of things, but mainly to restore balance in body, particularly when it comes to stress, hormonal response, nervous system. So they're just very relevant for today as well. But I wrote a book I wanted to have existed when I started, and I hope it will be a relevant book for a lot of people interested in health and wellness for the next few decades.
I'm very interested in health and wellness. Now, one thing that you do talk about quite a bit is the good old mushy or mushrooms. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I apologize. I'm not a fan of mushrooms. I have like this gag reflex when it comes to them. But how powerful, let me ask you this question first, then we'll get into that one. But what is an adaptogen, for example? Mm-hmm. What class is something as being an adaptogen? And then secondly, why are mushrooms so powerful?
Yeah.
I regret asking the second question.
Yeah, no. Adaptogens are natural substances that help your body to adapt to stressors. They've existed for thousands of years, but the term was coined in USSR, so current day Russia, in their military. There was a doctor, Dr. Lazarov. He was commissioned to find things that would help soldiers perform better without addictive properties and let down the next day. And I went to the Finnish Air Force as well, and it's very common with militaries and armed forces around the world to receive drugs. And there's a lot of proof of that around the world, a lot of addiction. I used to live in LA. There's a whole area called Skid Row that is kind of famous. A lot of those are Vietnam vets addicted to things. On a smaller version, caffeine or coffee could even act like that, where you get short-term performance, but there's a long-term letdown if you take too much of it. So you could abuse substances. There's many other examples of similar to that. So Dr. Lazar was asked, like, hey, can you figure out something that our soldiers can take that will make them smarter, faster, stronger, but it will not have negatives later? And they went on this long research with his team, with top doctors, and came up with the first adaptogens. Since then, over the last 70 years, there's been a massive pool of research. And what are the requirements of an adaptogen? They're actually quite simple, but they're really strict. So it ends up being that there's only like a couple dozen substances that qualify as an adaptogen today, but the rules are really simple. One is that it cannot be toxic or addictive. So it needs to be safe for habitual use. That already takes a lot of really beautiful herbs away. So there's a lot of great natural substances that are actually not safe on an ongoing basis. They're supposed to be cycled in and out. Secondly, they restore balance. And that's usually they work through the systems. The body has multiple systems. Yeah. And like a hormonal system. So working through balancing the hormonal system, they impact balance. And then third, which is the hardest for most of us Westerners to understand, they're non-specific. So for example, by increasing blood circulation, like there's a adaptogen called cordyceps, which increases ATP production, which is cellular energy, and increases oxygen intake. So that it just basically means your maximum oxygen intake improves. So that means a lot of things in the body happen. Your sports performance improves, yes, but your libido increases. And so these adaptogens are non-specific, and that's really difficult for some people to wrap their head around. If usually like the drug model says you have this, you take that. And those are like sniper rifle versus adaptogens that are more generalist. And some of them are mushrooms, some of them are plants. Mushrooms are a very big kingdom, or fungi is a big kingdom. I bet you have them every day. You just don't know. They're in the air, and they're required for wine, beer, cheese, bread, but also pretty much every fermented food. So if you have kombucha, sauerkraut, miso, they're on your skin. You probably have more fungi in your skin and your gut than you have cells in your body. You have, besides microbiome in your gut, you have mycelium. So fungi are part of our life, if you want it or not. And some of these top adaptogens are the good fungi. But there's also a reason why particularly Anglo-Saxon cultures have feared mushrooms, because there's bad mushrooms and molds. And there's also a lot of the mushrooms you find in a grocery store are not that healthy for you or delicious. So I totally understand everybody who has a fear or a disgust for them, especially if you have some of a British heritage, like, Australia also has. So
I guess you could say, if we are talking about mushrooms, which are, like you said, a fungi, magic mushrooms would be classed as a bad one, right?
Yeah, I try to avoid
for your health.
I try to avoid that narrative, good or bad, because nature doesn't work quite like that. But generally, there is culinary mushrooms. That's your portobello, butter mushroom. Then there's functional mushrooms that offer functional health benefits, such as a lion's mane, things that Four Sigmatic is specialized in. And there's psychedelic mushrooms, very small group of things that, for example, improve, like give you a psychedelic effect. Those are illegal in most countries, although the modern research is validating them, their benefits for certain people in certain environments. A lot of top universities are studying them. And then there's a whole suite of other kinds of fungi that you don't even know existed. But for mostly, it's important to know that the culinary mushrooms are very different from the psychedelic, and the functional is somewhere in between. You're not going to have, they're legal, but you're not going to have as big of an impact as a psychedelic, but it's more than a portobello. So it's like, it's in between the portobello and the psilocybin, which is the most common psychedelic mushroom.
I was just curious. Honestly, I appreciate you sharing that. And I wanted to sort of ask you about these other healing adaptogens as you describe what they are, what they have to be classified as. So if we were to say, okay, what are some of those healing adaptogens, and can we get them today with our regular diets, like that sort of thing? Like, does country also matter?
They're pretty available now, but pretty much if you would map out the whole world, you can find like one adaptogen pretty much in every corner of the world. So every society has had their like most nutrient dense sacred plants or mushrooms for each area. And they are in this elevated status. Some of them are really well known today. To name a few, like a turmeric, raw cacao in its unheated form. Ginseng would be like 3 examples of very household names that people, and obviously there's concerns about how you source them and how you take them, but generally those would be 3 very well known. Then there's more commonly available now substances that used to be more exotic, like a lion's mane mushroom, like an ashwagandha. Like ashwagandha over the last few years, it's a sacred Indian herb. It's a root, and it's now available pretty much everywhere in the world. And then there's some that are really, less known, like an astragalus or schisandra, or, things that people might have not known yet, but they're on the top echelon of natural substances. And that's what I try. In this book, I kind of cover the top 21. But yeah, some of them are very available, and I don't think anybody will struggle procuring at least half of these top 21 at any moment. And because of the internet, I feel like every one of them is available today.
And when we're talking about each adaptogen, they've all got a specific benefit to your health, right? Mm-hmm. So if we were to talk about our gut microbiome, which is incredibly important, and I'm a big advocate on it because of my audience probably knows of my journey with my gut health. It's wild and outrageous, my friend, and I won't share it with you today for the sake of time. But if we were to talk about some healing adaptogens for our gut microbiome, would we include mushrooms in that space? What other healing adaptogens can we include there?
So the Cliff Notes, which is an American saying, but the Spark Notes is that wherever you pretty much find bacteria in the world, including our gut, you will find fungi. Fungi and bacteria are some of the most overlooked kingdoms in biology. We mostly focus, especially in nutrition, you focus on plants and animals, and you love to debate how much plants should you eat, how much animal should you eat. But you ignore these 2 almost invisible or pretty much invisible kingdoms of bacteria and fungi. And they impact particularly our gut and our skin, which are also, by the way, connected. And if you want it or not, there is going to be fungi in your gut. And some of those are bad hombres that do really bad things. Candida is like a thing. And consuming button mushrooms or portobello mushroom, which are the same thing, and your regular culinary mushroom can actually make it worse. So there's a lot of people who have serious gut issues who should not consume like a normal culinary mushroom. That being said, some of these mushrooms are actually antifungal, which is a cosmic giggle, is the nature fights nature, because in nature, these fungi have to battle with each other. So there are some mushrooms that actually kill the bad mushrooms. And what you can do is today in this beautiful world, and there's companies specialized in it, Four Sigmatic not, but like other companies, where you can take a gut sample and look at what kind of fungi you have there. And there is literally thousands of research papers on this, and it's getting very, very solid of understanding what should be the ratios, because it's not only the matter of like, this is good, this is bad, but at what ratio it's healthy to have. Yeah. But to answer your question, maybe the best fungi in general for gut is called chaga, CHAGA. It grows in a birch tree in the world's largest forest, taiga, which is a forest size of all of the United States, spans from my native area in the Nordics, from like Norway, Sweden, Finland, to all the way to Alaska. You can find it in northern United States as well. It is a mushroom that grows 10 to 25 years in the harshest climates you can imagine. And you brew a coffee-like beverage from it, which is caffeine-free, kind of very, very black. It's the number one source of melanin in nature, which is a powerful antioxidant. Also, people often know it from the skin. SOD, which is one of the best antioxidants, superoxide dismutase, has tons of minerals, but particularly awesome for the gut. And it's been used for a long time in Siberian, also Finnish medicine for healing the gut, and it's quite powerful for that. So that would be one. Others to name on the fungi side is probably reishi mushroom for gut health. There's studies on rodent studies, granted, but like people on an exact same a low carb, high fat, high protein diet, and the rats changed nothing in behavior or diet, except they added reishi mushrooms, and the rodents' digestion improved so much that they lost weight and became more physically powerful by adding just like reishi mushrooms. Turkey tail is another one, but there's also herbs that are really good for the gut. And it depends also if you're more like, if you have those fungal issues, or are you more trying to maintain healthy digestion? So
turkey tail, that's not an actual turkey's tail?
No, and lion's mane is not the actual mane of a lion. They're common names for mushroom. It looks like a tail of a turkey, but no animals were harmed, or no lions were attacked. It's some of these substances have a lot of common nicknames. So there's if I say Trimersis versicolor, it's a lot harder to grasp than turkey tail, because it kind of looks like a turkey tail.
When I first heard of lion's mane, I'm like, this is a cool name. I got to admit, it's an epic name for a mushroom. And I'm like, hey, I might have to give this a go. But I was a bit skeptical because of the fact that it's a mushroom, and I'm like, maybe I've got to get past my gag reflex on that front, my friend.
Yeah, these ones tend to be very bitter, so they taste like drinking a black tea or something like that. There are powerful, healthy mushrooms like shiitake that taste like what you would imagine mushroom, but the chagas and the rishis, for what most people imagine a mushroom tastes like, is nothing like it. Rishi is very bitter, herbally, like getting a cup of hippie tea, and then chaga is closer to like smooth vanilla coffee that is really brewed really light. So like from a flavor point of view, a lot of people who cannot consume fungi can consume things like chaga.
This is all very interesting stuff, man. But I've got to be respectful of your time. I want to ask you a couple more questions, if that's all right with you, my friend.
Yeah.
What was the hardest part about you actually putting together this book in the first place and actually writing the book?
Yeah, this is my third published book in the US, and every time it's been more or less similar in the way that I've written about things that are near and dear to my heart and I'm familiar with. me and my co-author, who's a registered herbalist, Danielle, went through over 1,000 research papers for this book. But it is still like a thing that we knew a lot. So I would say if you write about a topic that is near and dear to your heart, it is the book. You actually start writing the book like 5-10 years before you know you're writing the book, because you're researching well ahead. There are people who, like a Michael Pollan, who doesn't know about a topic at all and goes on this 2-year journalistic quest. And that's a different type of book. I've never written a book like that. I've always written about stuff that I know about, and then I just kind of go on it. So for me, the writing itself is fairly quick. And the hardest part is usually like coming up with the structure, like the table of contents. And that is like that. And then for me, because I'm totally, English is my like third or fourth language. For me, the polishing is just poison, because like, it's just like grammar is not my thing. And luckily I have a great publisher. It does amazing things and they help out, but polishing the book and making it easy to read is really difficult for me personally. But from a creative process, getting the right structure in place is like takes a while, and it's kind of daunting at first because you've not written like one word and you're still like stuck. But when you have that structure in place and maybe a sample chapter, like when you've written the first chapter and then like, okay, now I have this like decades of knowledge in my head. Now I'm just going to deploy it with this chapter model. It's a lot easier. Then it's just work.
Yeah.
So that was for me. What was it for you? Obviously, near and dear to your heart, the story as well. So, and the topic. But was it similar to you or different on writing the book?
It was similar, and funny enough, English is my first language, and I struggle incredibly hard with grammar. I say in the book, actually, I make the analogy of, imagine I'm Batman and grammar is the Joker. I wouldn't be Batman without the Joker, but yet we sort of like we fight all the time. So I'm trying to. We just need each other. But the funniest thing is, I think, finding the story of what it's actually going to be, that structure element, was really, really hard. And to be honest with you, man, I gave up on my first draft because I'm like, what in the world is this? I have no idea what it is. And so I shelved mine and then eventually came back to it, and it became the book that it is. But then even the drafts after that, I was constantly changing stuff. And I think it just annoyed the living daylights out of people because there's just like things I was changing all the time. And so I completely understand when it comes down to structure, but I mean, well done for you, because English is in your first language, and here English is my first language, and I still struggle enormously with it. So
yeah. But I wouldn't, if you're listening and you're like, hey, I want to write a book, maybe my two advices. One is, don't be afraid of the editorial structural process. There's like all these platforms and service providers online. There are people who love doing that. So if there's like, hey, I need somebody to proofread my book, there's plenty of people who are really good at that. And that shouldn't stop you from sharing what's in your heart and like with the world. And the other thing is, it's really like, like doing the research, and that could mean just writing about something that you love and it's been part of your life extensively. So I think the writing is then a lot easier when you know and you've like committed yourself to the process. And having a podcast is also a great way because you can explore some of the topics in the book with awesome people over many, many episodes, right?
Yeah, that's what I did. And then my next book is actually, I'm more excited about it because, like you mentioned, the podcast stuff, I think it ties into that, other people's stories, and being able to form something really, really special. I'm super excited about that book, but anyway, I won't get into it. I digress.
Yeah.
Two quick final questions for you, my friend. What do you love the most about yourself and your story?
I, as probably many others, it fluctuates on how much I love myself, and it shouldn't, because you should pretty consistently love yourself. I'll tell a very quick, funny side story. As a kid, I read a study because my mom was in physiology and anatomy. And so I saw all these studies as a kid. One of the studies was that the number one body part that people hate is their nose. And I was very surprised because I was like, not muscles, not this and that. And the study explored it and said, it's like, you can hide your eyes, you can wear contact lenses, sunglasses, you can change the color of your hair, you can go on a gym. Like, nose is very difficult, and it's at the center of your face. And I was probably 12 or 13 years old, and I went to the bathroom, and I remember, and I'm like teenage, pre-teenage kind of boy. And I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, I like my nose. I love my nose. And I remember like, that is like one of the first self-love moments, as I remember as a kid, is like, it's okay to love something about yourself. I'd say a very specific thing that I love is curiosity, and like passion and curiosity. I have a shadow, a part of me that is part of me that I don't want. And there's a movie character, animation, children's movie that has that shadow, actually, that for me. And that character is very like annoyingly curious and passionate. And I love that part about me, but it's also my shadow. So it's also like the part that I sometimes hate about myself.
Yeah. So, being overly curious, you think?
Yeah, pretty much. And like annoying people with it as well, on the process.
Completely understand. So, yeah, I got you there, man.
Yeah.
Where can people find you, man, and connect with you? Get the copy of your book before I ask you the final question. Sure.
Pretty easy. Just type Tero and my difficult last name that you can find in the show notes. I'm on Instagram, and the book is kind of where books are sold, bookstores, and I guess Amazon is the thing now online, but there's other places as well. So it's fairly easy to find me and the book. And also, be it podcast or YouTube or writing, I try to write actively as well outside of. So just, I think through Google, you can find me and my work pretty easily.
Well, I'll make it easier for people to find you. No doubt about that. I'll spell it correctly in the show notes for people. But this is my favorite question. I love asking all my guests. And if you've listened to the end of my conversations with Max and Josh, you know it's already coming. But imagine with me for a moment that you've been able to reach the age of 100. All your friends and your family have decided to put together a film for you of everything you've ever said and everything you've ever done. Don't ask me how in the world they got it all. We'll call it magic for the sake of argument. But they've been able to get it and show it to you on your 100th birthday. What do you want that film to say and to show about your life?
I laughed so hard when I listened to one of your earlier podcasts, and I got to the end, and this is the question this is what I always ask, because I've done this movie. And this is one of the weird things I do, but about 15 years ago, for the first time, I edited a movie of my life, my autobiography when I turned 100. And I haven't told this, I don't know, this might be the first podcast I've ever said this, because it's hyper personal, like very personal. It's like, this many people have seen the video, besides myself. And there's a moment in life when I watched that video every morning for like a year straight. And I would start my day to the meditation part. That was my morning routine for a year. I would watch the video that I want to be said when I turn 100 years. And because it is so personal, I struggle saying what's in it, but it is very uplifting. It's kind of a happy party song. And one of the things in that video is an older gentleman, and there's a photo of a nude lady, like a painting, and the guy goes and peeks behind the painting to see what's behind the painting. And that is like an energetic symbol of what I want to be said is the curiosity and looking behind the painting of the nude painting. So that's one thing that's in the video. But I know exactly what I would want to be said, and I've to that point that I've even made a video of it. So
that is really special. You're literally the first person. I've asked that question to hundreds of people, man. You're the first person to ever say that you've actually done it. And it's not.
That's why I laughed. And
it's so cool.
And I probably should like update it a little bit, but I don't want to update it a lot. Like it's kind of perfect, and it's made with before I had kids and this and that, but it's like all still relevant today. And maybe it's me brainwashing myself and my subconscious mind, but yeah, I made that video because I felt what you're asking is one of the most important questions you can ask yourself. Obviously, you never know how long your life lasts and what's in store for you in our journey. But that's one of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself. And to me, I'm a visual learner, and like I needed to like explore that and put music with it. And the music for me, at least, was very powerful because you put video, photo, text, music, it like evokes emotion in a much more powerful way. So, yeah.
Wow. And not many people know this as well, but yes, it sounds like it's very much a legacy question, but it's also a leadership question at the same time, because how you choose to lead your life will often reflect your legacy. And so I wanted to do a creative way of asking that kind of question to people rather than just asking, hey, what's your legacy going to be? But you're the first one that has actually done my question.
Yeah.
Very, very special, man. But thank you so much.
Something maybe out of this more people, it took a lot of time, and I don't know, is it for everyone, but if you're interested in this, it's a real fun exercise of taking some time and going to iMovie or whatever editing tool and choosing the song that you love, the energy, and then building a little mini autobiography movie based off all of the themes that are important to you.
Well, thank you so much, man, for sharing your story with us today and for joining me on the Storybox podcast. I've loved this conversation.
Man, thanks. You're a legend.